Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. President Muhammadu Buhari is expected to dissolve his current cabinet tomorrow, on Tuesday, a week before his swearing in for a second term on the 29th. Almost all the current set of ministers have enjoyed a stable work experience since being initially appointed over 4 years ago. But as the country prepares for a new dispensation, Nigerians are still voicing their opinions regarding the performance of those ministers. What should be the least public expectation from those who will make the list this time? Well, for more on this, we shall be talking to Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. He was head of Media and Strategic Communications for the Aminu Tambuwal campaign organization for the last presidential election. Okey Ikechukwu, welcome to the Morning Show.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning.
It's good to see you again.
I'm all right, and you?
Yeah, thanks. Well, you must have...
Same here.
Okay. You must have listened to my introduction. Right. What's your assessment of the outgoing Federal Cabinet, Executive Council of the Federation, and what do you expect going forward when the President announces a new cabinet? What would you like to see?
Well, okay, to begin with, we start from where we are to move forward. Personally, I think he shouldn't have retained the ministers for all of the 4 years he was president. That impacted performance, it impacted outcome, it impacted expectations, and it also impacted the notion of opportunities. This is a very richly endowed nation, and I'm sure that for all the portfolios, there were others who could have added some value within that tenure, but it has come and gone. The sad thing about it is that there's not too much on the positive side to record for many of them, while admitting that they inherited a lot of problems. I think going forward, what Nigerians need and will expect of the president is a list of ministers who can perform. And when we speak of performance, we are not just talking about people who can tell you the right policy that will work, but people who can also navigate the environment and make sure it works. People of capacity, people who understand how to relate to others, people who understand the problems. Not just people who will tell you how it works in China and America and the UK, and that if we try it here, it will work. It doesn't necessarily follow. We're different people. There are politicians who are not interested in public service. They're interested in making money. And so they will also not be interested in you performing as minister. They'll be interested in how much money they can make from your ministry. Now, if the president goes ahead to make appointments without paying attention to all of this, we may not be going forward. The duty that falls on him now, after 4 years of a tenure that cannot be described as very impressive, he must look at his age and ask himself questions. What kind of Nigeria do I want? The last time I was around as military head of state, why did we carry out a coup? It was to give ourselves a better country. Do we really have a better country today? Do we have security? Are Nigerians patriotic? The opportunity for our youth, is it expanding? If the answer to all of this is no, that means that Providence has put him back to use another 4 years to really bequeath a country that he and everyone else will be proud of. So in the matter of choosing ministers, let ministers, even at the time of being interviewed by the National Assembly, let their names be accompanied with the ministries to which they are expected to be posted. This is not a picnic where you walk into the field and keep walking around. Any food you like, you pick. No, there are capacities. There are things people are good at. Choose them for it. Let them be interviewed by the National Assembly. Let performance templates be given to them. That will be the kind of expectation we want. But if it turns out, as it's always been in all the governments before and including his own, patronage, who are those who campaign for us during elections, who is our man in shun, who is our man in Anambra, it will not take us anywhere. As we've seen, it's not taking us anywhere today. So we expect the president to make a break from the past. He's not planning to come back, therefore he shouldn't be planning who to make happy. He should be saying to himself, I believe in my creator and I believe I'm ultimately answerable to him. Therefore, for these last 4 years in my very old age, and we are talking about very old age, I should leave a legacy I'll be proud of. In my place, they say that there are certain masquerades that don't dance for money. When an elder comes to the village square, he's not coming for you to spray him money when he steps into the square. He brings dignity to bear on the village square by his presence. That's what will be expected of the president at the moment. A more balanced list of appointees across all the zones, not the lopsided appointment he has today. A greater number of clearly competent persons, greater indications about policy on all fronts, and better communication too, because it would appear that most of those who speak for government are actually the major promoters who put fertilizer on fake news. That should change so that people will begin to consider government believable. These are some of the things that should come along as he contemplates a new list of ministers after dissolving his cabinet tomorrow.
You said that some ministers should have been replaced. Which ones would those be? You've also said that you believe that the president ought to now
I can't hear you.
You've said that some of the ministers should have been replaced. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I'm saying that, naturally, yeah. So some of the ministers should have been replaced,
which
certainly.
Ones should have been replaced?
Which of them?
Yes.
I think he should have replaced the Minister of Information. He was good during the elections, but when the governance and government came on the table of the APC, the trajectory became a little demoralizing. And among others, I don't need to run through the entire list, but you and I know that if you put out the names of all the ministers, about 50% of them, nobody will tell you he or she has ever had the names. And in any case, we only need to look at performance. It's not a question of how I feel. Take the list, look at performance and say, okay, we can understand why he retained these ministers. We can understand why he retained these other ones. That would be the thing. So it doesn't look like, oh, I don't like this man. That's why I think you should have changed him. But you and I know that they didn't add much value in terms of service delivery. We also know and can see clearly that even for the profile of government, the government was being attacked on all fronts. And what we got out of it were communication was not structured. The party itself was not organized. So we can't have that a second time. We can't. In the appointment of ministers, yes, you need a consensus. You need to consult your party. But with what criteria? If the criteria is party loyalty, you've already lost it. If you have 10 children and the village wants you to send somebody to take part in the council of elders, you won't send the rascal of a son. You won't send the one that's forgetful. You won't send the one that dresses badly and will bring disrepute to the family. You send the one that will represent the family well and also add value to the village. Now, that's what we expect of the president. He has a long list of ministers, most of whom he should have dropped long ago, and he didn't drop them. They didn't add value to his government. They didn't speak up for him while government was under pressure. They were just ministers and a source of embarrassment to Nigerians, to Nigeria, and to the president himself.
I'd like your take on the comments of the super minister, Minister for Works, Housing, and Power, Babatunde Raji Fashola, who pointed out that between 1952 and now, there have been 34 ministers of works, and they each spent 1.9 years, an average of 1.9 years. He's the longest serving. We have the sports minister, Solomon Dalong. He's the longest serving sports minister. Is there an argument, is there a case to be made for continuity?
Sorry, I'm trying to get the last part. That he's the first minister that did what?
So he says, Babatunde Raji Fashola says that between 1952 and now, that there have been 34 ministers for works, and they spent an average of 1.9 years in office. And that's not even enough time to design a road. That was his observation. So he's making a case for continuity, which was also the point made about Solomon Dalong, the Minister for Sports, and how he's the longest-serving sports minister, 4 years. Do you agree with that case for continuity?
Well, continuity is not a continuity of persons, but a continuity of policies, initiatives, and funding. If I want continuity in IRISE, and I'm the MD, it doesn't mean my being physically present, but it means my asking 3 questions. What does IRISE exist to do? How can I ensure that it continues to do it? What measures can I take to ensure that problems don't arise in future? So the notion of continuity that's tied to longevity and individuals is a kind of notion you have among barbarians or hunters, who use the bold man in front. It's not when there are structures in place. I don't take that. Let's look at the matter of longevity in office and performance. Alhaji Lateef Jakonde was governor of Lagos State for 4 years. Go and check the list of his achievements. It's about, if you take the list of the achievements of that man in 4 years, and you compare with the achievements of many governors who spent 8 years, in many cases, it doesn't come up to 20 or 25% of what Jakonde did in 4 years. So there's a delusional trajectory to the thinking of the political elite that, you know, I have to be there. 4 years is not enough to do anything. What are we talking about? Are you related to Methuselah? Are you going to live for 1,000 years? That will require 4 years in order to dust your hindquarters, another 4 years to get up, then another 4 years to say good morning. That's not how it works. This is the 21st century. There are a lot of things can be done within a short time. Fine, we agree. Fashola has been probably the longest serving Works and Housing Minister, and power and all the rest of it. A lot put on his shoulder. But you see, it's not a question of what you tell us that the ministry can do, but what we are seeing it to be doing. Between 1999 and 2015, PDP was in power. Within that period, if you traveled from Enugu to Port Harcourt, that stretch of the road, you will meet parts of it that was bad, and that is still bad. In other words, in those 16 years, no, that road, that stretch of express road, federal road, was never fully functional. The same thing for Enugu Onitsha. And if you take through Otukpo, you're going through Makurdi, the same thing. So all the major roads in the country, none of them was really fixed. If you're going to Lagos and you decide to pass through Kogi, you find that that road is the most scandalous route anybody can take. You pass through people's houses. And actually, that's a major road that links you to Lagos from that part of the country. How much work was done on it? So we must make a distinction between announcing budgets, recording expenditure, and showing impact on the welfare of citizens. That's the purpose of government. If as a minister, I come out and tell you how much my ministry, do you know we spent 4 billion on rail from Abuja to Kaduna? Do you know that in the last 3 years, we've spent 18 billion, in the last 3 months, we've spent 18 billion on youth empowerment? You see, don't announce figures, announce evidence. Today, there's kidnapping everywhere, there's armed robbery everywhere, and you take inventory. I agree, this government is performing very lousily and shamefully, but let's know that the blame does not just lie with the Buhari government. If you look at the list of beggars, probably half of the population of Kano today is beggars. The population of beggars and the age bracket is between, the age bracket is between 4 years and 14. Now, all of that means that all of them were born within the period of the PDP government. Did they go to school? What party was governing that state? And then you look at the population of those who are kidnappers and armed robbers, they fall between 16 and 45. That means that 20 years ago, they were still very young people. What is looking us in the face is a failure of the state to develop its human capital. And now in a spell of 20 years of democracy, we are harvesting undeveloped youth and human capital, and it's turned out in the form of criminality. The only difference is that there's a failure of containment by the armed services and the security agencies, but not that the problem originated with this government. The youth did not come from the moon. They've been here. They are here. That means that they are undeveloped. And for the states where you have all these massive beggars, go and check their budget for the last 20 years across all the political parties, whether they are governed by Labour Party, PDP, APC, ACN, and the rest of it. So we've evolved a political elite that doesn't understand service delivery. And so that's why we are where we are today. And so on the matter of infrastructure, yes, Fashola can say what he wants to say, but in the end, what we want to see is a world that works. Without electricity and good roads, I don't know what he has to tell us about the performance of his ministry.
Well, okay, let me ask you. We have seen a situation in the past when presidents retained some of their cabinet aides. Which of these ministers will you recommend, for reappointment for a second term in office? And will it be understandable if President Buhari this time around again takes 6 months before he announces a new list of ministers?
On the first question, I think he should get rid of all the ministers, have a clear template, and appoint fresh ministers, because even if there are good ones among them, and I believe there are, they have to some extent imbibe the culture and habit of lethargy that characterized the entire 4 years. I think he should get a fresh list of ministers. Even from the angle of just public perception, it will give a new sense of hope to the people. Colorless ministers, nobody knows what they are doing. Many of them have internal communication programs. They air every 30 minutes. Nobody watches it, not even people in their ministry. So we need new ministers. Then on the second point, I didn't quite get this. I think I'm forgetting
I said, will it be understandable?
The second.
Yeah, I asked whether it would be understandable.
If it took 6 months.
Yes, you know, because Nigerians will say, well, we understand.
Ruben, it will not be understandable even in hell. You know, and I'll take you to what we're familiar with. Both of us, Ruben, both of us were on the Guardian editorial board for 6 years or 7. What does it take to produce an editorial when there's a major national issue? It doesn't matter what you're doing. A draft comes out. It's looked. You get what I mean? A certain sense of responsibility and urgency. You cannot govern a developing nation like Nigeria with a lot of temperamental regions and zones in a leisurely manner, as if you're just lounging in your parlor. From time to time, you take some groundnut and throw in your mouth and drink some juice. No. 6 months, what were you assessing? He took 4 to 6 months in producing the list of the current ministers. What was the reaction of Nigerians when that list came out? What did you and I feel when it came out? It was a most depressing engagement from the list of names. Some of them with issues, allegedly with the investigative agencies. Many of them understood by their followers and the general public to be part of the political crisis of the Nigerian state. And this was his list of excellence to traumatize people who were asking for hope, who were hoping for something better than the PDP. It was, in my view, with all due respect to the effort that went into it, a totally disgraceful outcome. Now, I would imagine that with that record, its impact on the people and the lessons presumably learned, that if the president is inaugurated on the 29th, it will not take him more than 72 hours to announce his list of ministers. And among other things, there are things he should get them to do. I recall I mentioned this when he initially took over in 2015. What the ministers will start doing on being, on being appointed and sworn in would be to start summits, national summit on education, national summit on roads. We've had more than enough summits. The records are in the ministry. So part of his directive to the ministers should also include, you may not hold any summit, but review the existing ones, find out where your predecessors left from, since we are the same government, and draw a roadmap going forward from that point onwards. The ministries and ministers, the MBDAs are largely under-supervised in terms of outcome. So they focus on their meetings rather than service delivery. And that's why you come for an engagement after, besides the fact that they talk about money and read minutes and everybody goes home. At the end of every week, ministries and departments and agencies should be able to say, for this week, we are checking off the things we did. We are checking off the things we started, the things we concluded, the things we couldn't conclude. This is the stage at which they are. That's the kind of template I'm familiar with. That's the kind of template most of us are familiar with outside. That's the kind of template that you take into government. I've seen it taken into government. I was Assistant Chief of Staff to the Minister of Information, Chukwuemeka Chikelo. At the end of every week, we must check off what was done. When I led the Nigerian delegation to the 2004 New York Film Festival, we spoke every 2-3 hours. What's going on? How is this to happen? Please, by the time we come back, make sure we secure so and so agreements. These are the people you meet with. And why was he always like that? He said that government business must be run like any business. So, okay, if this was our company, this is how we're going to run it. But you find that you're driving about in siren with security men complicating the lives of common people whenever you arrive in any event. And then at the end of a month, you can't sit down and tell yourself, in all good conscience, tell the public, tell your wife or your husband, or tell your creator, yeah, in this month, for this office and title I hold, this is what I've achieved. We've had enough of that. And that's why everything is the way it is. Consumption-driven elite and nothing for the people, and we're paying for it by the criminality that's overrunning the country now.
But the representatives of the people have an oversight function. So how can they strengthen that function and ensure this service delivery of which you speak? And also the nomination process, which you mentioned briefly. What should the National Assembly do to demand more detail? Because you said
sorry, I'm trying to hear. I didn't hear anything at all. I'm sorry.
Oh dear, I'll start again. The representatives of the people, the National Assembly, have an oversight function. It's their responsibility to ensure the service delivery of which you speak. How do they strengthen that oversight function, and how should they be more effective? And also with the nomination process, you mentioned that briefly, that the president ought to provide certain details. Should the National Assembly not demand them if they are not provided? And what is your view of the convention of bow and go?
I don't know whether it's that probably Ruben's mic is better. I had National Assembly about a couple of times, but I couldn't get the question being asked or the issue I needed to comment on in that regard. So unless you allow me discretion of commenting on the National Assembly because I had the word, but I didn't get the question.
No, she was asking you...
If that is it, then I will just say...
She was asking you what should be the oversight role of the National Assembly in terms of service delivery. And also...
Okay, what should be the oversight role of the National Assembly?
Yes, and you had said earlier on that, the president in sending nominations, ministerial nominations, should attach the portfolios to allow for, a proper assessment. And she wanted to know whether, in fact, the National Assembly can insist upon that if the president does not do that. And then she asked, what do you think of this culture of, asking ministers to just bow and go without any quality interrogation of the nominee for ministerial appointment?
Thank you, Dr. Bati.
Did you get that? Okay.
Okay. Oh, well, yeah, I think your mic is slightly better than hers. Maybe that can be addressed. It's a technical matter. Now, oversight functions. The National Assembly has duties clearly cut out for it. It should do the assessment and so many other things. But three things stand out. The National Assembly is supposed to be made up of lawmakers who, for each of them, there is a research department. There's a full complement of at least 11 staff. That's what you have all over the world. So that if I'm nominated for minister or if another person is nominated, it won't be just when you walk into the hall or because I saw your CV that I will understand. Some research would have been carried out. For your portfolio, there's something I will know about it. If, for instance, you're nominated for agriculture and we ask you about farming and you tell us, oh, we're going to do a lot of irrigation by creating dams, dams will give us more water, so farming will improve. I will ask you from the information from my researchers, did you carry out any environmental impact assessment? Because when you create a dam, less water will go downstream. That means that all communities and states living downstream will have less water. Fishing will suffer. Those doing crab farming will suffer. Farming will also suffer. So you find that you then have a more holistic approach to the assessment of ministers. That we do not have at the moment because many of our lawmakers, where they have offices at all, they have PAs and SAs, and their major schedule is to carry their bag, make them look important when they come to an event, and nothing much is done beyond that. So the matter of oversight has to extend far beyond that. Then the question of ministers, a nominee is coming to bow, actually is not new and is not peculiar to us. And it's not just a friend of the house kind of thing. Some people may have such a profile and portfolio that in assessment, members, honorable members are satisfied with whom they are. Their duty is to assess. And if in their judgment, this person doesn't really require to be questioned, we know enough, we try, and all, he will be actually asked to take a bow. But you find in some cases here where it's done is, he was a former colleague of ours, we shouldn't drill him before the public. Oh boy, come and take a bow, and he takes a bow and leaves. And I recall that my former boss, Ojomadekwe, I was his as Minister of Transport. When he was nominated, he had in the House, being a former parliamentarian, most of his colleagues, and when he came in, what they agreed was, Ojo should come and take a bow. And he did. So the abuse of it is the issue, not that the practice itself is is something unusual, no.
Well,
the misuse of that platform, that could be a problem.
Well, okay, we've been talking about, ministerial appointees and what we expect and an assessment of the present team. But in the papers in the last few days, there have been reports about other appointees of the president, presidential aides, heads of MDAs, and all of that. And two basic indications. One, that most of the appointees are from the north, that the south is at a disadvantage, the southeast particularly. And then also that most of the appointees, are from Kano, Katsina, Kaduna, Adamawa, Ogun, and Oyo.
Katsina.
And Oyo, all the way down. Now, what we like to see in terms of, appointments at this level, is it a normal thing for, political leaders to appoint only people from their area? And is it fair enough to exclude a whole region like the Southeast in terms of the percentages?
Yes, you see, a sense of inequity emerges when people do not see, if you like, their own people represented in a common pool. The list of appointees, beyond ministerial appointees, other appointments, like you said, presidential aides, heads of agencies of government, is still lopsided. Even if you look, a lot of people complain that most of the appointments or appointees are from the north. That is true. But if you look at it, check the percentage of appointees from Katsina State alone, which is the president's own state. You'll just give up, because the question you ask yourself is this sort of insensitivity possible? Does it not verge on foolishness? Is Katsina State so capacitated in terms of human capital that it's now the only place that can supply people who can function in public office? What has been the performance of these states in national examinations, in the number of graduates they turn out every year, in their performance in all their other areas, that all of a sudden they're the only ones now supplying human capital for the highest offices in the land? Those are the issues. And I think the president has to address that very squarely. Particularly the crisis of the Southeast is a big shame. On all fronts, it is underrepresented in budgeting, in public office, in appointments, in recognition, in federal projects. As you're aware, the second Niger Bridge has been on the drawing board probably since 1999. For all of 16 years of the PDP, that bridge was not built. Eventually, they came up with the model of BOT, build, operate, and transfer. That means you build a bridge, put a toll gate. Those who built it will recover their money by collecting tolls. So only the Southeast is a place where people will pay for the bridge they cross. Meanwhile, projects of 3-4 times the same value have been executed repeatedly in other zones of the country within the period under review, which is 20 years. It's not a Buhari matter. Now, Buhari came on to effect the worst form of marginalization the Southeast could have nobody will even have contemplated, not even after the war. And if you recall, after he made his list of appointments and his attention was drawn to the underrepresentation of the Southeast, his comment was that, look, what else do they want? Emefiele have appointed Emefiele to CBN, Ngige is in labor, and all of that. So what else? He didn't even know these were not people from the, but the response itself showed that as far as he was concerned, nothing was amiss. But while you may blame the president, you must also blame the Southeast for its own lack of cohesion, for leaders who will come to Abuja for personal appointments and therefore have no protection from their people if anything should happen. But as leader, that's not what a president should take advantage of. He, as father of the nation, a king, an emir would know that in his kingdom there are families that are totally disruptive. But it will not prevent him from choosing a good child from that family. It will not make him go to strengthen the confusion there. He's father of all. He finds out who can be rescued. It is in that regard that the president has been performing disastrously. The sense of fatherhood of the leader does not exist. Even the sense of compassion in the event of misfortunes are not there. So inequity has bloomed more under him than at any other time since 1914, since the time of amalgamation. There's also the feeling that insensitivity has broken new grounds under him, in addition to very limited performance, in addition to a party that's not able to manage itself. All of this has to be addressed. In fact, one other thing they might do if they want to help themselves, because there's a lot of things the president can do. Look at the privileges of former governors. You know the effect it will have on Nigerians if the president puts down his foot, and says, listen, you served as governor for 8 years, you earn so and so amount. This is service. You're not acquiring a chieftaincy title for life. Therefore, you can't tell us, like Adams Oshiomhole ended up in Edo State, as a former governor, whereas I'm living, I'm entitled to a 200 million naira house. Are you going to build all the hotels in New York together as your house? And you look at what is happening in Jigawa, the same thing. Kano is working on the same kind of legislation. Dixon stopped the one of Bayelsa. So you see, people are looking for expansion of opportunities for an idle and consuming elite. If you grant all of these things, as they step out of office, every month for each of these states, every month, they will pull out not less than 500 million naira to service former public office holders. Are you not reinforcing poverty? This is the kind of narrative we should expect from President Buhari in this second term. Security votes, this is what I think about it. Entitlements of former governors and legislators, this is what I think about it. They voted for you. They didn't vote for you to earn 1 billion every month for the rest of your life. They voted for you for their lives and your lives and that of their children and yours to be better. Is that what you're doing when you draw upfront from the Commonwealth? It isn't. So this is an opportunity for the APC government to give us a new Nigeria. At the moment, they don't seem to be working towards that, but that's what we will expect and demand. And one of the things that must happen is a greater sense of equity in the management, allotment, and assigning of public appointments across the geopolitical zones.
Going beyond the ministerial list, what do you expect or hope to see with regards to supporting roles such as the service chiefs, the secretary to the Federation, chief of staff? We've already had the governor of the CBN being confirmed. What do you expect to see with other positions outside of the ministerial list?
What I expect is that he will have to move those positions. First of all, those who have held them long enough. This is not a hereditary title. It's not like you're the judge of Opobo, and so I'm his son, I must take it on. No. They've worked long enough, and we've seen that they've not performed spectacularly. I believe that the greater part of the problem of the president came from those offices around him. You know that the Office of Chief of Staff has attracted a lot of controversy, both in matters relating to contract, in one case of alleged fraud. I'm not saying it is true or not, but that there are also other people who can perform those roles. So the president should make a clean sweep of his work environment. That doesn't mean you give him strangers, because he must also have people he can work with. One expects that there is no part of this country where you don't have capacity. And if you look at those who have been president or heads of state before him, you could see the spread of capacities from different parts of the country in different, under different portfolios. So what I will expect is that the president will, if you like, democratize some of these things a little more and create more of processes than persons. We are told now there are people through whom you can get anything and everything done. What we want to see is that there are processes and methods through which you can get anything and everything done in the presidency. It's not happening at the moment. It appears an insular presidency with very few people who determine things, with people who even determine the fate of ministers and whether they can see the president. We can't have that in the next 4 years and hope to still have a country. It won't work.
Well, okay, there is a story on the front pages of some of the newspapers today, which I think should be of interest to you. And this has to do with preparations for the 9th National Assembly. The information...
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Preparations for the 9th National Assembly.
Okay.
Yes. Now, the National Assembly has come up with a number of guidelines, about 19 conditions that journalists seeking accreditation to cover the National Assembly must meet. Those conditions, some journalists have rejected those conditions as medieval, The spokesperson for the Senate president has also said the Senate president is not aware of these conditions. I mean, about 19 conditions. It's like you have to bring, your certificate of occupancy, your birth certificate, a letter from your employers, indication that your newspaper circulates about 40,000 copies per day, all kinds of conditions. What do you think of this, and what do you think the National Assembly is trying to do?
Well, first of all, what I think of it is, it's first of all an indication of immaturity and a failure of liaison, because all the National Assembly needed to do was consult with the Nigerian Guild of Editors and the Nigerian Union of Journalists. Look, we are thinking of a more streamlined way of doing things. What are your thoughts? In any case, can you give us a template? You see, they mismanage the press. They think that when you have an event, you call journalists there and you give them money, as they do in some cases, that is press. It is not. First of all, create a stakeholder group of, what do you like it, of interested parties. Call them to a 2-day retreat. Title it towards the 9th National Assembly. Issues under discussion include infrastructure, it includes personnel, but all of these things fall outside your purview. So what we want to discuss with you is seamless interface between NAS and Nigerian media, and I want us to share ideas and come out with a template. You may have designed all these, your 19 lousy conditions. You give it to them, what do you think? But all of this will be happening behind closed doors. They will feel respected. They will laugh at some of the suggestions. You will even laugh at yourself. They say, but Oga, why did you put this? He say, you media people are really very troublesome. So I say, well, but you can see it won't work. He said, my brother, see, how do we do it? So what you have is a largely immature political environment and political elite. When I rig an election and get into the National Assembly and I have a sense of entitlement and nobody can challenge me, that's what leads to the sort of thing you're talking about. So it's first of all a wrong thing to do. The approach is wrong. The content is mischievous. The intended outcome is only the opposite that will come. And you've declared hostilities by going public on it. So they missed it at that level. Then at the second level, in terms of what we should expect from the media, you see, the more open you are with the media, the more the media is likely to protect your interests because they see that you stand. Why was Babangida so popular? He will invite you, tell you everything under the sun. Look, I'm going to tell you the truth about some of these things, but you see, this is off record. By the time he gives you the background and gives you the actual issues on the table, first of all, you've been respected enough to be given insight. And so you decide how to manage it. I recall, Ruben, when we were still in The Guardian, I remember there was this column I wrote. The title was Wins Against Abacha's Transition. The person who invited me was the AOC Logistics of, I think, Air Force to Ikeja. And I got there, he went on about so many things, how the government needed support. And that, in fact, if you go to a country like India, you will not be head of the railways if you didn't have a military background and all that and all that. That conversation was revealing in several ways because when he excused himself, two junior officers who were with him said, look, Doctor, Oga likes you, all this one, that we've investigated you. You're not a member of NADECO. They're not giving you money. Our worry is, what is your problem? Are you the one who created Nigeria's headache? And all of that. You see, relationships develop at that level, and then that's what the National Assembly is not investing in. And that reflects in every other thing they do. You don't throw money at problems. You develop human interface on the basis of which problems are solved. But once I see myself as an honorable member who may not be challenged, who is all-wise, that's what will lead me to produce a kind of scandalous document they brought out. How do you hope to... you annoy the press, and your life is made miserable. In fact, the media in the National Assembly has, for the period we had democracy, given a good account of itself. So what will lead to this sort of thing? That document is also not an insult to the correspondents in the place who produced it for them. So my take on it, first of all, is that it's wrong-headed. The second thing is that it's also not a good enough reason for the media to now shred the National Assembly. The media should show maturity. Leadership of the media people in the National Assembly and of media houses that have connections should make contact. Listen, let's have a meeting on this. let us jointly produce a document that can serve us for this purpose. We understand your intention, you don't want embarrassment, but you must understand that we also have our job to do. That synergy, that liaison is what failed, and I think it can still be addressed and reversed. Even the Senate president, rather than going public to say he knows nothing about it, that kind of information that could be declared an exclusive, he could call a meeting, gain some mileage for himself, quickly call a meeting of National Assembly correspondents in his office, and the report will be that they met with him and sought clarification, and in the course of that meeting that he said there's very likely a mix-up which he hopes will be clarified within the next 24 hours. You see, everybody walks out of it looking good. The ink you will spend chewing up the National Assembly for his blunder is already contained by the Senate President's intervention, and in a matter of 2 or 3 days, it's no longer in the news.
Well, on that note,
they missed it.
On that note, Okey Ikechukwu, we'll have to bring this to a close and to thank you very much for coming to the morning show. And congratulations. I see you've completed the National Institute program. I can see the brooch, on your jacket. Congratulations on that.
Ruben, that was 5 years ago. Where have you been?
It's not up to 5 years ago. The last time we met in Abuja, you were still there. Anyway, thank you very much, for coming.